Yo, what's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to teach you guys how to make a really easy homemade motorized bike. The one I'm going to be making today is going to be on a 26-inch beach cruiser, and I'm going to be using this 80cc motorbike kit that I found on Amazon. It'll get you to about 30 miles an hour on this thing. The build's going to take you anywhere between 3 to 5 hours. Just really take your time on the first part. We're going to knock out the hardest part first, and then after that it's super easy. So here's a step-by-step tutorial on how to do it. Alright, so here's what the kit looks like laid out on the floor, and I'll post a link to this exact same kit down in the description. And the only requirements for this kit is your bike has to have 26-inch wheels or higher, and it has to have an open frame. I recommend you put it on a beach cruiser because it has the coaster brakes that rarely ever wear out. Alright guys, so here are all the tools you're gonna need. The only power tool you're gonna need is a drill with an 11/64 drill bit, and the rest of the tools are really basic. The socket and the small wrench are 10 millimeters. And you're also gonna need a knife or some scissors. You're gonna need an Allen wrench, and I really recommend you have some vice grips. You don't need them, but I really recommend it. Alright, so the first thing you wanna do is grab your wrench and take off the back tire. You're also gonna need a Phillips head screwdriver to take off the coaster brake. Alright, so now that we have the wheel off, we're going to go ahead and install the sprocket. Here's all the parts you're going to need for the sprocket. They all come in the same bag, so just look for the bag in your kit. A huge tip for you guys, I really recommend you just take your time on this. You want to line up the sprocket as perfectly aligned with the hub as you can. First things first, we have to take off the coaster brake. And the easiest way to do this is to take a screwdriver, shove it through the spokes like that so it can't move anymore. And you want to grab a wrench and twist off the bolt. And since this bolt is usually really tight, I recommend you stand up and do it. And you're gonna go ahead and take off the dust cover, and you can chuck this because we don't need it anymore. Now you just gotta take one of the two rubber pieces that looks like this and put a cut right there. Alright, so now that you have this piece cut, you're gonna wanna weave it through the spokes and then wrap it around the hub. Now you wanna grab the uncut rubber part and the metal sprocket, place the rubber part over the hub like that, and then put your sprocket on top. For each bolt, the first thing you wanna do is take a locking washer, put it on, then put that bolt through the sprocket and the two rubber pieces. Then the metal bracket's gonna go on top of that like this, a regular washer, and a nut to complete it all. Now we're gonna go ahead and hand tighten all 9 bolts. I recommend for the first 3 bolts, you guys skip 2 holes in between. That way you can get the 3 metal plates out the way and bolted on. Then once that's done, you just gotta put the remaining 6 bolts on and make sure each bolt's evenly hand tightened. Alright, so here's what the hub looks like when it's hand tightened, and you should still be able to move it around at this point. Now for this last and final step on the sprocket, we're going to go ahead and tighten all 9 of the bolts. This sprocket has to stay directly in line with the bike hub. Here's an example of that. You can see the wheel bearings directly in the middle of the sprocket. Now this is going to be the trickiest part of installing the sprocket, because all 9 of these bolts have to have the same amount of pressure, or else your sprocket's going to be wobbly, and you don't want that. Okay, so the first thing you want to do to get the sprocket lined up right is write numbers 1 through 9 in a star pattern on every bolt. If you don't know what a star pattern is, it's basically the bolt directly across from where you numbered last. So after you do that, I really recommend you tighten the sprocket in your lap like this. That way it's super easy to turn and you don't have to flip the wheel vertical so it won't get out of line. Okay, so to make sure your sprocket stays centered, you want to adjust it every single time you tighten a bolt. And this might sound time consuming, but I definitely recommend it because all the bolts have to be tightened evenly. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm tightening each bolt with 3 spins and adjusting it in between every single bolt to make sure it's still uncentered. And eventually after about 3 or 4 rounds of that, the sprocket's going to be tight enough to stay in place. Then I recommend you guys hook it up to the bike and spin it this way because it goes so much faster. And you want to crank these bolts really tight because the motor is going to be constantly pulling on them. And if you don't, they'll come loose. Once you're done tightening, you want to go ahead and spin the tire like this. Take a screwdriver or something and hold it against the sprocket while it's spinning. And if you see that it's moving back and forth like this, that means your sprocket's wobbly and you need to readjust it. And if your sprocket's not wobbling, we can go ahead and reassemble the coaster brake lever and then reinstall the tire. And you're done with the hardest part. It gets pretty easy from here on out. Make sure you tighten your coaster brake back really tight. Alright, so the next thing we gotta do is install the motor on the bike, and this is super easy. You just take the motor out of the box, unscrew all 4 mounting screws, and then place the motor on the frame. Now if the front of your bike frame is over 1 inch, you're gonna have to use the frame adapter that the motor kit comes with. It looks like this, and it's super simple to put on. Just take the motor off, unscrew the front 2 studs. I recommend you use vice grips to do this. It's very easy. Pliers should work too. And then screw in the 2 bolts for the adapter. And remember, the 2 empty bolt holes should be facing up, not down. Then just place it back on the bike frame. Then attach this metal ring. Make sure you put a locking washer and a regular washer under the nut for both sides. Then once that's nice and tight, you just do the same thing to the back side. And your motor's good to go. We're gonna go ahead and install the power box. It looks like this, and you're gonna need the long washer that looks like this, and then the 2 bolts and 2 nuts. You can screw these in with the Phillips head screwdriver, and we're gonna move on to installing the gas tank. So we're gonna place our gas tank on top like this. You need these 2 brackets to get this installed, and then you need 4 nuts in your wrench. And next we're going to be installing the muffler. Quick tip, if you want the muffler to be really loud, go ahead and loosen the bolt that's at the bottom of the muffler and then pop the bottom off. I'm not going to do that in this build because I'm giving this bike away, but yeah, that's fun to do. Alright, so we're going to loosen these 2 bolts, and now we're going to mount the muffler and screw it back in. Make sure you don't over tighten these bolts because you can strip the threading inside the motor and it'll wreck it. Next we're going to install the fuel line shutoff valve, and I'm going to stop talking for this part and just show you. Next up, we're going to go ahead and take off the handlebars. Now this can be super difficult, but if you use these tips, it'll go by really easy. So for both handlebars, you want to take a flathead screwdriver, shove it all the way in as far as you can go, and then pour soapy water down into the handlebar. And then take the screwdriver out, twist it with your hand, and it should pop right off. And don't forget to do this to the other side too. Alright, so now that that's off, your right handlebar is going to become your throttle setup. So let's set that up right now. Here's everything you're going to need to install it. This is the part where you're going to need the drill with the 1164 bit on it. And this part's really easy to follow along with. Okay, so when you're installing this, the little brass pin you see in the middle has to sink into the hole you just made. That keeps the throttle from slipping off. And then you're going to tighten the screws. Now it's time to hook up the carburetor. Grab the throttle wire we just installed and follow it all the way down to the end, and then grab your carburetor. You're going to unscrew the top of your carburetor, and there's going to be a bunch of parts inside. These parts are super tiny, so make sure you're careful not to lose any of them. Here's all the parts that should have came out. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is take this pin and insert it into the brown cylinder like this. You want to make sure the pin gap lines up with the cylinder gap. And after that's in, we're going to go ahead and grab the metal washer and insert that over the pin. And once again, make sure the gap lines up with the cylinder gap. And go ahead and place your spring on top of that. Now grab your throttle wire. The first thing we're going to put on this is the top of the carburetor that you unscrewed. Next, we're going to have to run the wire through the spring, and you're going to want to bunch up the spring like this. And at the bottom of the wire, there's going to be a little pin that looks like this, and you're going to insert this at the bottom of the brown cylinder like this. And once that's done, test it out a little by moving your throttle back and forth, making sure it goes up and down, and insert this whole piece back into the carburetor and screw it back in. Now we're going to go ahead and slip it on the motor right here and then get a Phillips head screwdriver to screw it in. Next we're going to install the gas filter and the gas line. And now we're going to install the clutch. Here's everything you need. Now just grab the clutch wire that looks like this and attach it to the clutch lever. And use your Allen wrench to loosen this bolt and then slip it onto the handlebars. Then go ahead and throw your grip back on. And now we have to attach the clutch cable to the actual clutch on the motor. You're going to need these two springs. Slip the bigger one on first. Then run it through the small hole on the motor. And on this side you're going to put the second spring. You're also going to want to screw this small cable lock into place. Now run the wire through the engine's clutch lever and then slide the clutch lock on and tighten it down. And now there's really only one step left, and that's to install the chain. The first thing you want to do is loosen these 3 bolts to expose the engine sprocket. Now make sure you use the right size screwdriver because you don't want to strip these bolts. And the next thing we're going to do is take off the back wheel fender. Now you can keep the fender on, but you'd have to cut a small piece off to let the chain fit through it. Now we're going to go ahead and grab our chain and undo the master lock. The master lock looks like this, and to get it off you're going to need a pair of pliers. Now set one end of the chain on the back sprocket and then we're going to run it through the motor. And we're going to need the part that looks like this and a screwdriver. Run the chain through the motor as far as it'll go, and then connect the second end to the first end on the sprocket. And we're going to do this to try and figure out where we need to break the chain. Alright, so when you're going to break the chain, I recommend you leave yourself an inch or two of slack. That way you won't have to worry about cutting the chain too short. And I'm going to try and explain this part as best as I can. You can only cut the chain every other link. If I cut my chain right here, the master link will have nothing to link into. But if I cut it right here, it'll be perfect. Both ends have to look exactly like this. Just look really carefully and test out your master link before you cut the chain. And this is the link we're going to go ahead and cut, so we're going to mark it with a Sharpie. Now we got to remove the chain from the bike completely. Now if you have a chain cutter, I'll put one in the description for you guys. You don't have to remove it. But since we're going to cut the chain with a flathead screwdriver and a hammer, we're going to need to remove it. Now we're just going to find the link that we marked, shove the screwdriver in like this, and if it's not going in, go ahead and tap it in with a hammer. Once it's in the little groove, go ahead and twist it side to side and it should pop right off. Then you can get rid of the excess and then put the chain back on the bike and reinstall the master link. Now you can see we have some slack that we have to get rid of, so we're going to go ahead and install the chain tensioner. Just loosen up the 2 bolts and then bolt it on the frame like this. And then just adjust the wheel and give it tension. And once we're done with that, really quickly, the last 2 steps you have to do are install the spark plug and then plug in the wires. And to install the spark plug, we're going to use the same tool we used earlier. And then for the wiring, the blue wire goes with the blue wire, and then the black wire goes with the black wire. And the light green wire goes with the blue wire, and the yellow wire goes with the black wires. And once we have that all plugged in, you're completely done. We just gotta go get some gas. For your first ride, you're gonna wanna mix 1 gallon of premium gas with 8 ounces of 2-stroke oil. And to start your bike for the first time, you're gonna wanna hold in the clutch lever on the left side of the handlebars and pedal up to a speed of about 5 to 6 miles an hour. And then release the clutch and you should hear the motor trying to start. Now, if it doesn't start within the first 5 to 6 seconds, you wanna make sure your gas line is open. And if it's already open, you wanna go ahead and choke the motor by pulling the choke lever up. And then try starting it again. It might take about 5 to 10 minutes to get it started for the first time, and once it's up and running, you want to let it warm up for about 4 to 5 minutes. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Let me know if you guys need me to clarify anything in the comments. Once again, I'm going to leave all the parts you need down below. My name's Kenyon. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.